I was fired from my own job even though I still owned almost everything. It happened less than 48 hours after a normal Monday morning. The person who fired me was my direct boss. There was one number on the paperwork that did not make sense. The termination system required ownership approval that he could not have. I remember wondering if I had misunderstood something basic. I started doing the math in my head and it did not line up. By the time I reached my car, I still did not know what I was missing. I will explain how that moment came to exist. I joined the company quietly. I never wanted a title. I had money before I had a job there. That part was known only to my family. My father helped build the original version of the business years before it had a name. He never ran it publicly. He funded it and stepped back. When he passed away, the shares were split. Most of them came to me. It was not a clean story. There were documents and trusts and waiting periods. By the time everything settled, I owned 90%. I did not want anyone to know. I had seen how people treated silent owners. I also wanted to understand the business from the inside. So I applied for a mid-level role, operations support. Nothing fancy. I interviewed like everyone else. No one recognized my last name. That was intentional. I used my middle name instead. The offer came quickly. The pay was fine. I accepted. My mother thought it was strange. She asked why I would work for something I already owned. I told her I needed to see how it ran. I needed to know who made decisions. She did not argue. She knew how my father was. He always said ownership without knowledge was noise. My boss was assigned on my first day. His name was Aaron. He was confident, not loud, very certain of himself. He liked clean systems. He liked being the final word. I respected that at first. He ran meetings tight. He did not waste time. He also did not explain much. You were expected to keep up. I did. I stayed quiet. I took notes. I watched patterns. I noticed that approvals flowed through him even when policy said otherwise. I noticed that some departments waited on him even when they did not need to. I did not correct anyone. I was not there to manage. I was there to observe. After 3 months I understood the rhythm. After 6 months I understood the shortcuts. After 9 months I understood the risks. The company was growing fast. Faster than its internal controls. People were being promoted based on loyalty, not performance. Most of them reported to Aaron. He had built his own layer. Not illegal, just insulated. The board met quarterly. They trusted reports. Those reports were filtered, not falsified, just framed. I never attended board meetings. My name was on the ownership registry, not on the staff directory. That separation was deliberate. My father had set it up that way years earlier, a blind trust-controlled visibility. I could access everything. Others could not see me. I never abused it. I rarely logged in. When I did, it was to check health, margins, debt, vendor exposure, nothing dramatic. Then there was a project, a restructuring initiative. Aaron was leading it. He framed it as efficiency. It was mostly consolidation. Some roles were being removed, some teams merged. On paper it made sense. In practice it created bottlenecks. I raised a concern in a small meeting, nothing confrontational, just a question. He dismissed it. Not harshly, just quickly. We moved on. 2 weeks later the same issue appeared, this time with consequences. A delivery missed. A partner complained. Aaron blamed execution, not structure. I said nothing. I wrote everything down. Then came the review. My annual performance review. It was early. Unscheduled. That was unusual. He called me into his office. He closed the door. He did not sit. He stayed standing. That was also unusual. He told me my role was being evaluated. He said alignment was a concern. I asked what that meant. He said culture fit. I asked for examples. He said tone. I asked whose tone. He said the team's. I did not argue. I asked if there was something specific I should change. He said it might be too late. The meeting lasted 7 minutes. I left with nothing written, no warning, no plan. That night I told my mother. She was quiet. She asked if I wanted her to call someone. I said no. I wanted to see what happened next. 2 days later I was locked out. Email access gone. Badge deactivated. Calendar canceled. I found out when I tried to enter the building. Security checked my badge twice. They called someone. They asked me to wait. Aaron came down. He looked annoyed, not surprised. He told me to come with him. We went into a small room near HR. There was a folder on the table. He sat. I stayed standing. He told me my position was eliminated, effective immediately. He slid the folder toward me. Inside was a termination letter. It listed reasons: redundancy, alignment, operational needs. There was a severance amount. It was small. There was also a final line: approved by management. I asked who approved it. He said he did. I asked about ownership sign-off. He said it was not required. I paused. That was when I felt unsure. I wondered if policy had changed. I wondered if I was wrong. I asked if the board had been informed. He said yes. I asked when. He said last week. I did not remember a meeting. I asked who presented. He said he did. I nodded. I signed nothing. I asked for a copy. He said HR would email it. I reminded him I no longer had access. He hesitated. He said they would print it. They did. I walked out. In my car I sat for a while. I replayed the conversation. I thought about the system. I thought about the approval matrix. One number kept repeating. 90%. That was the percentage. The threshold. Anything above 50% required owner sign-off. Anything above 75% required majority owner. There was no exception. Unless the owner delegated. I had never signed a delegation. I opened my phone. I logged into the trust portal. My access was still active. Nothing had changed. No delegation, no emergency clause, no override. The termination should not have been possible. I wondered if there was a mistake. I wondered if the system had been bypassed. I wondered if Aaron believed his authority was enough. I did not feel angry. I felt exposed. I had hidden for too long. I drove home. I told my mother what happened. She looked at me for a long time. She said, "Your father warned about this." I asked what she meant. She said people forget who they answer to. She said systems drift. She asked what I planned to do. I said nothing yet. That night I slept poorly. Not because of fear, because of calculation. I was not thinking about revenge. I was thinking about impact. Employees, vendors, debt covenants. One wrong move could ripple. In the morning I received a call from legal, internal counsel. They asked if I had approved a termination. They used my full legal name, not the name I worked under. I asked which termination. They said mine. I asked who authorized the request. They said operations. I asked who in operations. They said Aaron. I did not respond immediately. I asked if they had my delegation on file. They said no. There was a pause. I asked if the termination had been executed. They said yes. I asked if they were aware of the ownership structure. They said yes. Another pause. They asked if I was calling as an employee or as an owner. That was the first time the two roles collided out loud. I said I was calling as myself. They said they would call back. When they did, their tone had changed. They asked me to come in, not to HR, to a different floor. I agreed. I arrived an hour later. Security escorted me, not because I was restricted, because they were instructed to. The room was larger. There were 3 people: legal, finance, 1 board liaison. Aaron was not there. They asked me to explain my involvement. I did, simply. I showed documentation, trust statements, ownership records. They did not interrupt. When I finished, they thanked me. They said the termination was under review. They said I was still an employee. They said access would be restored. I asked about Aaron. They said they would handle it. I asked how. They said carefully. I left. My access returned that afternoon. No announcement, no apology, no message from Aaron. The next morning there was a meeting invite, mandatory, leadership only. My name was included, under my legal name, not my working name. People noticed. Whispers started. Aaron arrived late. He saw me. He stopped. He looked confused. Then something else. Recognition, not of me, of the situation. The meeting started. Legal spoke. They outlined a process failure. No names, no blame. They said corrections were underway. They said governance would be reinforced. Aaron did not speak. I did not either. After the meeting he approached me. He asked why I did not say anything earlier. I said I did not think it was necessary. He asked if I planned to take his job. I said no. He asked what I wanted. I said clarity. He nodded. He walked away. That was the last conversation we had. By the end of the week he was gone. Officially resigned. No explanation, no farewell. The company continued. I returned to my role, same title, same desk, different weight. People knew now, not the percentage. But enough. I did not stay long after that. I learned what I needed. I stepped back into the background. Ownership stayed, employment ended quietly, the company still runs. Better now, slower, more transparent. I still think about that day. Not with satisfaction, with caution. Power does not announce itself. It assumes, and sometimes it forgets to check the numbers. After that week, things did not settle the way I expected. They slowed instead. Every interaction felt measured. People spoke more carefully around me. Not fearful, just aware. I noticed it in small ways. Emails copied one extra person. Meetings had agendas again. Approvals were documented. None of that was announced. It just happened. I stayed in my role. Operations support. Same tasks. Same hours. But now everyone knew there was another layer to me. No one said it directly. They did not need to. The first real change came from finance. They asked for my input on a vendor review. Not approval. Input. That mattered. Before that week, they never asked. I gave factual feedback. Nothing strategic. I did not want to blur lines. Legal followed a few days later. They asked if I wanted a formal briefing schedule. I said no. I said I preferred written summaries. They seemed relieved. I think they were unsure how visible I wanted to be. I was unsure too. The board liaison emailed me once. Short message. They thanked me for patience. They said procedures were being updated. They said no response was required. I did not reply. I watched Aaron's absence ripple. His team reorganized quietly. No announcement, just calendar changes. One manager moved, another left. No drama. It confirmed something I already believed. Structures matter more than personalities. Without him, the system adjusted. Not perfectly, but better. I still felt strange walking into the building. Not because of power, because of timing. I had entered as a learner. I stayed as a variable. People did not know which version of me would speak. Neither did I. One afternoon, a junior analyst stopped me. She asked if I had time. I did. She closed the door. She asked if what happened to Aaron was related to me. I said indirectly. She asked if she should worry. I asked about what she said about asking questions. I told her no. I told her questions were safer than silence. She nodded. She said that had not always been the message. She left. That conversation stayed with me. It explained more than reports ever did. Fear had crept in before I arrived. I just happened to be present when it was noticed. That did not make me a hero. It made me a witness. I started documenting patterns again, not for leverage, for understanding. Who escalated, who avoided, who waited. I noticed that some managers had built habits around Aaron's style. Fast approvals. No pushback. Results over process. Those habits did not disappear overnight. They needed replacement. That was not my role. But I could observe. I shared notes with legal once, only once. They thanked me and asked me to stop. Not because it was wrong, because it shifted responsibility. They needed to own the fix. I agreed. My mother asked if I was happier. I told her no, not unhappy either. Just more alert. She asked if I planned to take a seat on the board. I said not yet. She said my father would have waited too long. She smiled when she said it. I smiled back. But I did not commit. Weeks passed. The company stabilized. Margins held, no major losses. One contract renegotiated, another paused, nothing dramatic. Then HR requested a meeting. I hesitated before accepting. Not because I feared them, because of optics. I went anyway. They wanted feedback on the termination process. They asked if I felt mistreated. I said no. They asked if I felt misled. I said maybe. They asked if I wanted compensation adjusted. I said no. They looked surprised. They asked what I wanted. I said clarity. They asked me to explain. I said systems should not rely on assumptions. They wrote that down. They thanked me. That was the end of it. No follow-up, no memo. The next shift came from outside. A supplier called me directly. He used my legal name. He said he had heard things. He asked if contracts were safe. I told him yes. He asked if leadership was stable. I told him improving. He asked if he should wait. I told him to follow the contract. He laughed nervously. That call bothered me more than the firing. It meant information was leaking, not facts, signals. That can do damage. I called legal. I told them. They already knew. They said containment was in progress. I asked how. They said by being boring. I understood. Visibility creates noise. Silence reduces it. I stayed quiet. I stopped attending optional meetings. I did my tasks. I left on time. I became predictable again. People relaxed. Then finance made a mistake, a small one, but visible. An approval delay caused a missed payment window. Fees were incurred. Nothing catastrophic, but unnecessary. The responsible manager blamed the new approval chain. I was copied. I replied with one line. I said delays reveal pressure points, nothing else. The thread stopped. Later that manager asked to talk. He said everything felt slower. He said before things moved. He said now everything waited. I asked if he preferred speed or accuracy. He said both. I said that was the problem. He did not argue. He left. I realized then that Aaron's influence had not been authority. It had been momentum. He kept things moving, sometimes past safety. Now the company was learning to pause. Pauses feel like loss when you are used to motion. That adjustment hurts, not visibly. Internally, I felt it too. My own pace slowed. I questioned decisions longer. I checked more. Not because I doubted myself, because I doubted context. One evening I stayed late. The building was quiet. I logged into the trust portal again. Not to check power, to check exposure. 90% was not a shield. It was a responsibility. Every choice touched many people. That weight was abstract before. Now it was physical. I felt it in my shoulders. I thought about leaving again, stepping away, letting professionals handle it. But professionals are shaped by systems. Systems drift without oversight. My father had known that. I had inherited it. The board requested a private call, just me and the chair. He asked if I trusted the current leadership. I said yes with caveats. He asked me to list them. I did. Process clarity, succession planning, delegation thresholds. He listened. He said they were aligned. He asked if I wanted to join formally. I said no. He asked when. I said when anonymity became more dangerous than presence. He paused. He said that moment might already be here. I did not respond. After the call I walked outside. The air was cold, clear. I tried to remember why I joined as an employee. Curiosity, understanding, humility. Those reasons still mattered, but the environment had changed. I could not unknow what people now knew. That imbalance lingered. I began planning my exit, not sudden, structured. I documented my role. I trained a replacement quietly, no announcement, just preparation. When I told my manager, he was surprised. He asked why. I said timing. He nodded. He did not push. On my last day nothing special happened. No speech, no card, just a handshake. I left my badge. I walked out, this time voluntarily. Ownership remained. Distance returned. From the outside the company looked calm. From the inside it was learning. That learning would take time. Mistakes would happen. But they would be owned. I stayed connected through reports, monthly summaries, quarterly calls. No daily noise. I thought often about the firing, not as a betrayal, as a signal. It showed me how easily authority can detach from structure, how confidence can replace verification, how silence can be mistaken for consent. I do not regret hiding my ownership. It taught me how the system behaved when it thought no one was watching. I also do not regret revealing it. That moment corrected a drift that words would not have. The hardest part was accepting that both roles could not coexist for long. Employee and owner pull in different directions. One observes, the other decides. Trying to do both creates friction. That friction eventually burns. I chose separation. Not because I was pushed. Because it was cleaner. People still ask about Aaron. Where he went. What he does now. I do not know. I do not ask. His role ended. The system moved on. That is how organizations survive. Not by loyalty. By alignment. I learned that alignment requires constant checking. Numbers, permissions, processes, assumptions. One unchecked assumption nearly broke trust. It did break mine for a moment. But it also clarified my boundary. I am not there to be liked. I am not there to be invisible. I am there to ensure the structure holds. Sometimes that means stepping forward, sometimes stepping back. Knowing which matters more than power. That lesson stayed with me long after the badge was gone, and it still guides how I choose silence or speech today. After I stepped away, the company did not disappear from my life. It became quieter. Reports replaced conversations, charts replaced faces. That distance helped me see patterns without distraction. It also made responsibility feel slower, less urgent, more permanent. The first quarter after my exit was stable, revenue held, costs stayed flat, no surprises, that was good. It also meant changes were not being tested. Stability can hide hesitation. The second quarter showed movement, small restructures, role clarifications. Nothing public, nothing dramatic. I approved most things without comment. I rejected one proposal, just one. It involved consolidating authority under a single operations head. The justification was efficiency. The structure felt familiar. Too familiar. I asked for revisions. They complied. No pushback. That told me the lesson had landed. I still did not attend meetings. I listened to recordings. I read minutes. I noticed who spoke, who stayed quiet. Those dynamics matter more than outcomes. People often think power shows itself loudly. It rarely does. It hides in defaults. Who sends the email? Who schedules the call? Who feels allowed to decide? Those signals were shifting. Slowly. That was encouraging. My mother asked again if I planned to take a visible role. I told her not yet. She asked what I was waiting for. I said certainty. She said certainty never comes. She was right. But timing does. Timing feels different. It feels less urgent, more inevitable. I waited for that feeling. It arrived quietly, not with a crisis, with a resignation. The CFO gave notice, planned, orderly, no scandal, but significant. He had been a stabilizing force. Replacing him would matter. The board asked for my involvement, not as an owner, as context. They wanted continuity. I agreed to a call, one call. We spoke for an hour. I shared concerns, not recommendations, concerns. They listened. They asked if I would stay engaged through the transition. I said yes conditionally. They agreed. That was the first time boundaries were negotiated openly. It felt different, healthier. The replacement search took months. During that time I became more visible. Not publicly, internally. People reached out with questions. I redirected most, but I answered some. Only when process clarity was needed, never outcomes. That distinction mattered. I could feel trust rebuilding, not in me, in structure. The new CFO arrived, capable, careful, less charismatic, more methodical. I liked that. Charisma accelerates, method slows. After his first quarter, he asked for feedback. I gave him one sentence. I said predictability is undervalued. He smiled. He said he agreed. That told me enough. Around that time, someone asked if I regretted not confronting Aaron directly. The question surprised me. It came from outside the company. A friend. He had heard a simplified version of the story. I told him no. He asked why. I said confrontation creates narratives. Narratives obscure systems. He said that sounded calculated. I said it was not cold, just precise. Precision prevents repetition. I did not need Aaron to understand. I needed the structure to. He thought about that. He said most people want closure. I said closure is personal. Correction is organizational. They are not the same. I rarely spoke about the firing after that. Not because it hurt, because it was complete. It had done its work. Time passed. The company grew. More slowly, more deliberately. New policies were tested before rollout. Approval chains were documented and visible. Delegations had expiration dates. Those details matter. They prevent drift. I attended my first board meeting 2 years later, in person. No announcement, no introduction, just a seat. Some people recognized me. Others did not. That was fine. The discussion was practical, no grand strategy, just trade-offs. That was encouraging. At the end, the chair asked if I wanted to speak. I said no. He nodded. That silence said more than a speech would have. After the meeting, one director approached me. He said he had been skeptical of silent ownership. He said he was less skeptical now. I asked why. He said because silence had not meant absence. It had meant restraint. I thanked him. I did not comment further. Restraint is not always understood. Often it is mistaken for weakness. Until it is needed. I still think about the day I was fired. Not emotionally, structurally. It revealed how quickly authority can invert when unchecked, how easily procedure becomes suggestion, how confidence fills gaps left by ambiguity. That knowledge stays with me. I use it elsewhere. In other investments, in other boards, I ask simple questions. Who approves? Who verifies? Who notices? Those questions rarely offend. They clarify. People sometimes ask if I ever told Aaron who I was. I did not. There was no need. The role was complete. Knowing would not have changed the outcome. It might have changed his story. I did not want to be part of that. I do not think of him as a villain. I think of him as a product of a system that rewarded speed over reflection. That system corrected itself. At a cost. But not a fatal one. That is the best outcome you can hope for. I still own 90%. That number has not changed. What it means has ownership is not control. It is accountability without applause. It is deciding when to intervene and when to wait. It is knowing that silence can be active, and speech can be disruptive. I no longer hide my role, but I do not advertise it. People know enough, not everything. That balance feels right. The company knows who must be consulted, but not who must be impressed. That distinction protects decision-making. Sometimes I walk past the old building. Not often. When I do, I remember how small the room felt when I was fired. How ordinary, no shouting, no threats, just an assumption. Assumptions are the most dangerous part of any organization. They are invisible until they fail. Then they feel obvious. My father used to say systems fail quietly before they fail publicly. I understand that now. The firing was a quiet failure. The correction was quieter. That is how it should be. There was no revenge, no triumph, no lesson delivered in a meeting, just an adjustment, a reminder, a boundary. I am comfortable with that ending. Not because it feels resolved, but because it feels honest. Things do not tie themselves up neatly. They shift, they adapt, they leave marks. I learned to trust structure more than personality, process more than confidence, verification more than certainty. Those lessons were expensive, but not wasted. They continue to pay dividends, not just financially, but ethically. I am careful now about where I place authority. I watch how it moves, how it concentrates, how it escapes notice. I ask questions early, before they feel necessary. That habit has prevented more problems than any dramatic intervention ever could. When people hear the headline version of the story, they expect a reveal, a moment where the room changes. That moment did not exist. There was only a series of small decisions, each one reasonable on its own, together corrective. That is how real power works. It does not announce itself. It accumulates, it pauses, it redirects. The day I was fired, my boss thought he was acting within his role. He was not malicious. He was confident. That confidence was misplaced. But understandable. Systems had allowed it. The system corrected him, not me. I was just the reference point. That distinction matters. I am glad it happened the way it did, quietly, imperfectly, without spectacle. Because it showed me something lasting. Authority without verification is temp. Ori. Ownership without presence is risky, and clarity is not loud. It is consistent. That is what stayed with me. Long after the job ended, long after the badge was returned, long after the number stopped feeling abstract, I carry that forward, into every decision, even the ones no one sees.